Life doesn't move in straight lines. It twists, turns, and surprises us along the way. On Better Things Ahead, we talk with people who have walked those winding paths. Each story reminds us of the lessons, hope, and promise of better things ahead.
This week on Better Reminders, we're going to revisit our podcast on anxiety. We had two very special guests that week. We had Kayla White and Stacie Albritton. They came on and talked to us about how to help children with anxiety, how to just kind of walk through anxiety generally. And so we hope that you really enjoy this episode, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. I'm Michael Estes, Senior Pastor at Ridgecrest Baptist Church. I have two very special guests with me today, Stacie Albritton and Kayla White. Stacie, tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been on the podcast before. We're glad you're back.
Thank you. My name is Stacie Albritton, and I am our Children and Preschool Ministry Director here at Ridgecrest.
And we were just talking, you've been at Ridgecrest for a little over 20 years?
Yes.
So we're so glad that you're here today. Kayla, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello. I'm so glad to be here as well. My name is Kayla White. Mm-hmm. I am a therapist in the area. My husband and I have a private practice in Madison, Ridgeland area. And we work with a little bit of it all with counseling and mental health. And we work, I think, probably for all ages from 5 years old to 85 years old, and work with parents and kids and adults and marriages and all the things. And so the heart of what we do is to come around people and to walk alongside with them, especially families specifically, and helping people with the whole family unit. And so, yeah, that's what we do.
Awesome. So not long ago, we did a podcast on mental health that came out not long ago. And my daughter was on that podcast with us. We were talking about kind of teens and taking care of yourself and how to do that sort of thing. And that's how we know each other is you talked to Lorelai. I think she shared a little bit about how she had gone to see you and how you'd helped her. And so I'm so glad that you're here today. What we're going to talk about today is really how we as people know that we need help. There's a lot of things that we can do as believers that do help us with anxiety. We have Bible passages that talk about the fact that we shouldn't worry, but instead we should pray. We should open God's Word, remember His promises, and that sort of thing. And those things do help. We believe that those are the things that are in Scripture are true and valid and important. But one of the things I do know also that's in Scripture is that we need support of other people. God has created us for relationships, and sometimes the support we need comes outside of maybe our closest circles, or maybe we don't have a close circle and we need other people to come alongside us. So my question to you, Kayla, I'll start with you, is how do you help a person know that maybe they need support outside of what they're getting right now?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. I think that, as far as, helping a person to know that they need more than what they're just getting, are you talking about in the context of just the everyday of as far as church and just that kind of context?
Yeah. So I'm thinking, okay, we're in the middle of life group and we see a person struggling. They're just having a hard time. They're going through a lot of things. And we're doing the best that we can as a life group to support them. But we realize that maybe we are inadequate in some ways. Yeah. How do we help them get connected with somebody?
Yes. So I think that is a great scenario, because I think that's something that happens a lot. You have someone that is in the life group, and a life group is supposed to be a safe space, right? And so a lot of times the heart of a life group is for you to be able to open up about things. And as you open up about things, I think that's a good thing. But sometimes I think as a member of a life group or a member of a close-knit community like that, you can see that other people are struggling, and you can have the conversation of okay, I think maybe they need more support. And it can be a hard place sometimes as the person who's in the life group that sees a friend struggling. It doesn't have to be a life group. It can just be a friend,
sure.
Just a friend where you see I really feel like this person is struggling and needs more support, but I don't really know how to approach it because I don't want to offend them. I want to be there for them. How do I navigate that? And so I think, a couple of things. I think that if you have a therapist that you are friends with or have support, I think finding someone that is a good, godly therapist who you can, have on your radar for friends is an important thing, and so having that in your back pocket is a really great thing. Like, I have a list of 3 or 4 people that I know that are great people. Now, I'm a therapist, so it's easier for me to be able to do that.
Sure.
So sometimes people are like, I have no clue even how to refer, where to refer to. So I think that, asking around and getting that information is important. I also think going to your friend and sometimes being like, hey, you've been talking a lot and I have a suggestion, and I'm not telling you that you have to do this. It's just a suggestion. And what are your thoughts about maybe seeking out a little bit more support and help? And I think that sometimes, I think we've gotten better as a culture where counseling and therapy, it is more normalized now, right? It is more normalized. But I think it is also still really scary. And I think that when you go to a person and normalize it for them, sometimes they are more willing to be like, okay, yeah, maybe I should do this. Sometimes it just takes having a conversation with someone. And sometimes I think we are fearful of doing that because we don't want to offend someone. But I think actually it can bring a lot of peace to someone to say, hey, I've been hearing you talk about this. Like, I want to be able to help you. What are your thoughts about, getting some more support? I may not know a person, but we can figure it out together. Let's figure it out together, and being there and walking through it with them. I think that brings people peace because it normalizes it. And they're like, okay, this might be something that might be good for me, instead of this like scary thing that feels like, okay, I'm gonna have to call someone and set up an appointment. You can kind of do it together. So yeah.
All right. That's really helpful. I think a question that I want the 3 of us to talk about for just a few minutes is, it's maybe not a question, but a statement. But the things that we're seeing with regard to anxiety and people around us, maybe in ourselves, but also just kind of in the public around us. You see it with children. I see it with adults. Our student pastor would tell us he sees it with teenagers. Why do you think it's such a big deal right now? Why are we seeing kind of rising anxiety in the culture around us? I'm sure you see trends. I'm curious to hear from both of you, like the trends that you see in your areas. What are you seeing, and why do you think it's happening?
Do you want me to start here?
Sure.
I can go. Okay. I think that one big thing, of course, and I'm sure you'll speak to this too. I think that you have, obviously, the world in which we live in is heavy on, technology, right? And this is just the reality of the world that we live in. I think it's a beautiful thing in a lot of ways. But if you look at research, if you look at, statistics, you're going to see that the year that the iPhone was created, you see an increase in anxiety. It's just what it is. It's like actually, it's not just an increase. It's like a straight increase. The peak of it is, if you look at charts. And so I think that is a huge, huge element of it. I think that it's probably, I don't want to throw out a number, but a huge percentage of what we're seeing with kids, but also with adults, because I think that we are just, as affected by it as well. Just the family unit as a whole. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I would say that technology is a big one that I see. I see it insanely. The patterns of it are insanely mixed in all areas of every age. It touches every age that I see. And I would say that, whether it's a young child, or who's on their tablet, up to a marriage who's dealing with it because they come home and they scroll, to teenagers who are focused on, TikTok and Snapchat, or, college students, or, older adults who are navigating. It's all over the place. And I think it increases anxiety for sure.
How have you seen it affect children's ministry over the last maybe 15, 20 years?
I would say attention spans are significantly shorter. You and I have been reading The Anxious Generation.
Yeah.
And that speaks to a lot of what you just mentioned. But with the brevity of videos that kids are watching, whether it be on YouTube Kids or even just maybe video games, just that the instant gratification.
Yeah.
They don't have the attention span that they've had in the past, and it leads to behavioral issues
Yeah.
as well as anxiety.
Yeah, there's a lack of contentment, I think, in our world just in general because we are so used to getting what we want when we want it, and that goes to technology. I think that there's a lot of comparison that technology brings for older kids whenever, when you start getting your phone, when you're, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and then on up. You look at it, everyone is seeing, technology shows us now where everybody is.
Yeah.
That's a huge issue that I see of not only now, you used to could go like after school, ride your bike and enjoy like riding your bike with your neighbors now you're like looking at your phone and you see, oh, this person's with this person over here and this person's over here and I'm not included. You have that going on. You have the comparison just of what people are doing and it looks like this, their world is so much better than mine, and comparing that, you see people just doing stuff with their friends and you're not included with that. Even with parents, we do the same thing. We and individuals, we scroll and we look at other people's lives and we make it look like, we feel like it's so much better than our own. It's just the comparison aspect. I think it's also not only comparison, it's not only attention span, but it's also just the ability of, not getting outside. We don't get outside. Yes. We don't go do activities. We come home and we, get on our phones or we get on screens or we get on the computer and we are not out doing things. And that is a huge thing as well. We're not exercising. We're not, doing activities. We're not outside riding our bikes or outside taking walks. We're not doing any of that. We are in home, in our homes. And I think that's a huge part of it too. I think you have just multiple layers with it.
Yeah. Anything you want to ask, Stacie?
I was just going to say, we've had conversations before about, the fear of missing out. Well, most of my children in my ministry don't have phones of their own yet. Maybe the older ones are starting to, but what I have seen at times is their parents realize that their kids might be missing out on things that other kids are enjoying, and so it kind of trickles down, and they tend to sense when parents are anxious about something, and you can just see. I've just seen kids, their anxiety levels rise just being in the presence of another adult who is experiencing that.
Yeah, our kids absorb what we feel. And so, I think with social media, or not with social media, with technology, with kids, I think that, yes, they can absorb if we feel like, oh my goodness, all right, I have 3 kids. I have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 5-year-old. And so the feeling for a parent is so real. And I know this continues because I work with so many parents of feeling like, oh man, like we need to do this because this person's doing this. And then that comes with technology. And then we get anxious. And sometimes we make the problem a problem, even though it's not even a problem for our kids. We make the problem a problem.
Yep.
And I also think as parents, we also, with small kids, I see this a lot where parents also often use technology to pacify our kids because it makes it easier on us. And that's a big thing. And I get that too, because sometimes it is so easier to give your child a screen at the end of the day when you're tired, you know. It's easy to give them a phone at dinner because they won't sit still. And I get it. I 100% get it. But even though I understand it, I think that we want to work with families to help navigate that and find alternative ways to work with that, because I think it's causing a greater issue in anxiety because now you're enabling the whole thing. So there's just so many multiple layers to it.
Yeah. So y'all both talked about parents and kind of some of the things that we struggle with as parents. I mean, we're now on the back end of parenting. We don't have young children anymore. We have 19, 17, and 15-year-old. We have grown people at our house in a lot of ways, and we navigated a lot of that. We did some of it good, some of it not so great. What do you think is, like, from both y'all's perspectives? So from a ministry perspective, from counseling perspective, what are some things that parents, like, maybe the worst things that they can do for their kids, as far as, like, you just kind of see as trends where parents are just trying to figure it out and they freak out and they do fill in the blank? What is it that parents struggle the most with when it comes to, that you see on a regular basis when it comes to, like, trying to interact with their children?
Mm-hmm. Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah. So basically what I'm asking is, like, what are the most common mistakes that parents make when it comes to trying to parent their children?
I think that there's so many.
I know. I've participated in a bunch of them. I've learned from my mistakes.
You know, and I think we all make mistakes. You know, we all have things that we don't do well in seasons, and that's just part of parenting and guiding and learning. And so there's so much grace there. But I also think that there's this aspect of, you know, wanting to grow and wanting to learn as a parent. And I love that y'all did this podcast, because I think it's probably, you know, some parents listening and saying, okay, how can I do better? What can I do to do better?
Yeah.
And I think that's a great posture to have, to be in. I think that mistakes that parents make, I think, you know, like I said earlier, for young kids, pacifying with technology, I think, you know, that is something we have all done. I've 100% done it. And Chris, my husband, who's also a therapist, we literally have these conversations. We do check-ins, goodness, probably every few months of like, okay, what are we doing well and what are we not doing well? And most often we're saying, okay, we need to hone this in. We need to, you know, my kids love to watch a movie in the car. There's been seasons where we're like, we're just going to not do it. You know, no technology in the car. We're not going to do any movies. There's nothing wrong with doing that in seasons, but like only on car rides or like long car rides. You know, I think because I think it's overstimulating sometimes. We're getting it so much, you know, technology so much all the time. I think, you know, pacifying, we'll have the conversation of like, okay, we're not going to do screens during the week. We're just going to do family movie nights on a Saturday night. You know, we do that. You know, sometimes it's like, okay, this is a season where we are going to do in the afternoon. We're not going to do any extra tablets or video games. You know, you kind of have to figure out what's best for your family. But I think that constant conversation of what do we need to do better in this season in regards to technology, we have to be having it. And we have to be having it continuously. It's not just a one and done conversation. I think that's one. I think for older kids, or, you know, when you have parents having older kids, but as far as teenagers, I think, you know, parents, you know, the comparison aspect of what we talked about earlier, we as parents can compare and feel like we need to do all the things and have our kids do all the things because we feel the need to do that. I think what our kids ultimately need is just, you know, time as a family and time with their peers and friends, and then time with us. And so I would create an environment in your home as a parent where you do all of that, you know, where you guys you all put your phones down when you come in, especially if you have ages that your kids have phones, you know, and it is where you just like spend time together. Like you do the family walks, you do the family bowling nights, you do the family movie nights, and the phones go up, you know, and they're not going to like it. They're not going to love it. You're going against the system, but it's like trying to do it. And if you can start it earlier where you kind of filter this into your family system, I think it's healthier. But even if you haven't, saying, okay, guys, we're trying something new here. I want everyone to leave their phones. And it doesn't mean you're taking it. You're not taking it. You're going to have time with your phones, but we're not going to do, you know, we're not going to do phones at meal times. We're going to sit together and we're going to sit and talk. We're going to do family movie nights, but we're not going to all sit on our phone while we're watching the movie or the show. We're going to put it up, you know, and doing that, I think that's a big thing that I see so often. Families, you know, Chris and I work with families that are operating individually and not cohesively together. And so phones are a big part of that. And so that would be a big thing too, I would say.
Yep. I would probably say, and I've heard you say it before, parenting out of fear.
Yeah.
When it comes to technology, there's not a one and done solution to protect your child. It's an ongoing conversation. It's adapting, like you said, evaluating what's working and what's not working, because every family is different, and what works for one family won't work for the other, and technology's changing.
Yeah.
And you can't just make a decision and leave it at that.
Yeah. I wish it was as clear as an easy, simple formula for everybody, but it's not. And it depends on your child, and it depends on, you know, different things within your family. And it depends on if your, you know, parents are divorced and if they're not. And there's just so many different things, elements that you kind of have to look into and say, okay, how do we work with the dynamic that we have? And if I could get a penny for every time that someone's asked me, you know, what age do I give my child a phone? You know, that's a hard one too. And there's not a clear cutting answer for that either, but there are definitely things and resources you can seek out. So yeah,
one of the things that we did with our kids with phones, again, this is something we did not do perfectly, but ours didn't get phones until they needed them in order to contact us to pick them up from somewhere. And even then, it was just kind of a scaled thing where, like, Micah got one at 12. He was the youngest one to get one. Well, he was coming home from school by himself. And so, like, we needed him to be able to get in touch with us. That phone was not a phone in the sense, all it was an iPhone that he could, once he got on the internet, he could FaceTime and he could text. And that was really all he could do. And that grew over time. But one of the things I see that parents do, and I did this as well, is not allowing your kid to struggle, to fail at things.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that you're not there at all, but it does mean that it's okay if your kid needs to work through something, that something's hard, that something's not easy right away. And you don't have to come in, and support doesn't mean you come in and fix it for them right away. It means I'm going to be there by your side while you struggle through it. I'll help you some, but I really want you to try to figure this out on your own. I will say that's one of the biggest benefits to youth sports from our perspective is we couldn't go out on the field with the boys in a baseball game when they were struggling. That would embarrass them.
Yeah.
And
just as good for the parents as it is for the kids.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of those mistakes that I would encourage parents, like, look, it's okay if your kid struggles.
Good. That's so good. There is a book. It's not a Christian book, so I'm not telling people to go read this, but it is there is a lot of truth in the book. It's called The Comfort Crisis. And the book is, the whole premise of it is about how we as a culture in our world have become so comfortable, and we have, we don't challenge ourselves, and we as parents often don't want our kids challenged.
Yeah.
We say we do, but then when it comes to the thing when they leave their water bottle in the car, they leave their homework, what do we do? So often we're like, okay, what do we need? Will we rescue them? And so I think, like you said, creating an environment in your family system where, you're challenging yourself, but also your kids are being challenged. And that means like not rescuing them, but also doing hard things together. Like go do hard things as a family, go on hard, hikes, go and do things that are out of your comfort zone that may push you a little bit. Like, and hiking may not be your thing, but there's a lot of hard things in the world to do together as a family, and do some things and create habits and create that as a family where you push yourself in that way. And so, and that's a big one. Build that resiliency.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So one last question I definitely want to get in before we're done. What are some things that you look for in a person, whether it's a kid or an adult or a teenager? What are some things that you're looking for where you say, okay, they do need support. They need extra help. They need to go see a counselor. They need to talk through some things. That person doesn't need to be their parent in this case. That person doesn't need to be their youth pastor. It probably needs to be somebody outside their normal sphere of influence. How do you know, or what are some signs that you look for? And that's for both of you. Like in children's ministry, if you see some things, you're like, I need to talk to the parent about this. Or as you're kind of watching, you're looking, when would you tell a parent to go get help for their kid, or for them to come in and talk to somebody? So what are some things that y'all look for?
I'm probably going to defer to you and your professional opinion, but to me, it's observing their changes in behavior. I've seen where sometimes kids withdraw from friendships that they've been comfortable with, and a lot of times more emotional and more difficult to settle. Probably not using any of the right words, and that may not be what we're looking for.
No,
but
I think that's great. I think that going off that, I think all those things are totally right. And I think here's the thing: we all as humans are going to have moments, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult, you're going to have moments of anxiety. You're going to have moments of sadness. And so I think as a parent, going back to what parents can do, I think making that, normalizing that, as a family, you're going to have times where you do great and you're going to have times where you fail. That's all normal part of growing up and being a human. And I think that normalizing all those things is important. But I also think that there comes a point in certain people's lives where that anxiety, those moments, the sadness, the moments of sadness or the moments of anxiety, they can become debilitating. And I think that I always tell people when they come in to see me, I'm like, I think anxiety is one of those things where it either can consume you or you can learn to consume it, in the sense that anxiety is a real thing that if you if you're not aware of it, it truly can consume you completely. But it starts somewhere, right? And so I think that having moments, if you see your child or you see in yourself, or you're having like days where you're circumstantially stressed, right? Where you are like, you know what, my child has a really big test and they're really stressed. That's normal. That's something normal, right? You're going to be stressed, and that's good resiliency we talked about earlier. Yeah. But when you see that your child has a 99.9 average and is staying up and studying because their perfectionism in them is wanting to do so well in every single thing that they can't even concentrate on anything else because they've got to study, that's like, okay, that's kind of debilitating. You can't even come to dinner, or you can't even, you're overwhelmed by this, and and it doesn't necessarily make sense because you have great grades, right? Even someone who isn't doing as well in school, right? If they're trying their hardest and you see that they're trying, but they're completely consumed by it, you're like, okay, this is something that's debilitating. If you see someone who is losing sleep, right? If you're starting to lose sleep yourself or your child, if they're having a hard time with that, that's debilitating. That's starting to be debilitating. We need sleep. If you see that it's affecting friendships, you mentioned friendships. If you see that friendships are starting to shift in yourself or with your kids, where they're like, they're getting in a lot of arguments with their friends, there's a lot of drama. If you see it to where they are, you yourself are in a lot of drama. If you see, so friendships changing, that's a sign that's debilitating. If you see a lot of tears, constant tears, you're going to have moments of tears, right? But if you see this constant sense of, tears all the time for the smallest of things, and you just break out in tears, that's debilitating. Okay, this is keeping you from, happiness. If you see a lack of concentration, if you see a lack of motivation, like motivation is a big thing. If you're like, you see your child not wanting to do things, or you notice that in yourself, that you just want to come home and sit on the couch and veg out, and your child is doing the same thing, that's debilitating. These are the things that we need to look for. So I say lack of motivation, lack of concentration in certain areas. You see a lack of sleep. You see outbursts, emotional outbursts, feeling overwhelmed all the time. And it's not circumstantial. Just this, edginess, irritability. That's a big one. If you notice your child is always irritable, maybe they're carrying some anxiety, maybe they're carrying some sadness that they're dealing with. They don't know how to express it. Yeah. Anger, if you see anger outbursts, like a lot of times parents see these anger outbursts and they're like, why are you so angry? But anger is also a way that kids express anxiety, they're expressing their anxiety. So that's a way, you have all these things, and I'm using these examples as kids, but they also carry on into adults too. If you see that in your spouse, if they're getting angry really easily or irritable really easily, or they're not sleeping, or they're, you're emotional a lot, those are all signs that that's debilitating, and you need to go talk to someone. If you see it in a friend, we mentioned the life group earlier, you need to go talk to someone about it. There's no shame in it. And I also want to say this too. I think a lot of times we feel like therapy has to be something that you're like in for forever.
Right.
And that's not the heart of it. Like, I think I love, like Lorelai, we mentioned Lorelai earlier. She's the best. And she literally, this has only happened to me one time in all my practice.